also, for this particular exam, the majority, pretty much all of the test is gonna be multiple choice. So I'm not really gonna put fill in the blank for this one, it is going to be the majority multiple choice. I think, if I remember correctly, there's maybe like 3 fill in the blank or something like that, and there's some true and false, but for the majority of it, it is going to be multiple choice. Okay? What else? I think that's it, and then once we're done with the test, we're gonna learn econ.
Yes. I've been waiting to learn this since the start of the semester.
Why?
And now we're gonna do it like.
It's not a joke, but econ is, it's kinda like astrology, like for women.
What?
Like there's rules, but they make no sense, and it doesn't always apply. Because of the stock market and its variables and how ridiculous it all is. It's just gambling, basically. Econ is gambling, right?
But that's very,
How dare you? You wound me. I'm already wounded and you're wounding me even more.
Nixon said that.
Who said that? Nixon?
He said econ
So-
is better than
He said that. Wow. So if I look it up online, it'll say right there, President Nixon.
It's probably gonna say like check your sources.
Oh, of course, yeah. Alright, for today's date, children.
Are we represented?
Who's the
Okay, so last time you kids answered the question of whether or not we are represented, who said yes? So I'm assuming that all of you said no. Okay, wow. So, as I have told you before, the House really represents the people's power because in the original Constitution, it was the House that was the only one that the people could vote on. The Senate represents whose power?
state?
Very good, yes. So the Senate represents the state power, right? That was its original purpose. Thanks to which amendment do we now vote for our senators? 17th Amendment, yes, very good. However, that was the original plan, right? And as we know, the original Constitution and the original plan of the Founding Fathers is very, very different than the plan that we have right now and the government that we have right now, because obviously historical events have changed everything. Now, a lot of the changes, unfortunately, have benefited the government and haven't really benefited us, mostly because the people in power want to keep that power. And since the original Constitution didn't really give that much power to the people, it was made a lot easier for those in power to keep that power once other historical events occur. Especially when you put in like race, social status, and all this money, all those other things. Now, another very big factor of this is redistricting and gerrymandering, okay? Now, those two things are very, very important. Do you know what a district is?
LEZ?
Okay, yes, that is one type of district. So a district, like let's say this is the city of LA. That is one district of the city, okay? Obviously this is not to scale, but that's kind of how it is. And if we lived in a perfect world, they would redistrict the city in equal parts, like this, right? Or based off of population. It really depends on the state. Sometimes it is people, sometimes it's a commission. Gerrymandering is another thing that happens. So instead of doing this, they kind of go like that. So these are districts. They don't look equal because they're not, and that is for a particular purpose. Now, this has historically taken away the right to vote of a lot of people who are in the minority groups. So this is the reason why Texas stays red, why most of the southern states stay red, because of redistricting and gerrymandering. Because especially like, for example, Georgia, I don't know if you kids remember the election during Biden's time, but Georgia was one of the first states to flip blue for a very, very long time. There are a lot of Democrats in these states, but because of redistricting and gerrymandering, they never win because of this. Now, there have been 2 SCOTUS cases that have focused on this. First one is Baker versus Carr. This is when the 14th Amendment allows for redistricting. So redistricting, it's making a district all over again, right? That's why it's redistricting. To be a justiciable issue. So that just means that SCOTUS, if it has anything to do with discrimination, either race or anything like that, SCOTUS can actually do something about it. Because for a very long time, SCOTUS did not get involved. And then we have Shaw versus Reno, and this one is redistricting by race must be held to a strict scrutiny standard. So if they are doing it by race, it has to pass a very, very strict test before it can actually be applied. Now, this is important because it determines the amount of representation that certain people have in Congress. Last year, both Texas and Florida, they did a redistricting where Texas, like Democrats in Texas, they lost 2 seats in the House because of these redistricting. California, in response to it, did their own redistricting, and we actually gained 2 Democratic seats in the House because of this. So this is important because it determines who is going to be in Congress. This is the reason why Congress makes sure that when they're doing this, it always benefits their party. So, obviously the US population has grown since the start of the US. And so it really makes it pretty much impossible for one House member to equally represent every single person that they were voted into office by. And it's just, especially in very, very large cities like LA, it is very difficult for one person to represent every single person living in LA or in their district. So the framers wanted representation to be one House member for 30 to 60,000 people, which already is crazy, right? That's a lot of people. Granted, they were pretty much all white, right? The only ones who could vote. So maybe it was easier. But they still had different social status, different backgrounds, so it was still a little bit difficult for one person to represent every single person living in that district. Now, however, the reality, because of population growth and how spread out population is in the US, so it's one House member for 500,000 to 900,000 people. which is friggin' ridiculous. There's just no way that that one person is going to actually be able to represent everyone. So it results in something called malapportionment. So it just means that there are some districts that are more represented than other districts, just because of the amount of people living there. Which then in turn means that there are some people who have more representation than others. It also affects the Electoral College, and as we all know, what does the Electoral College do?
The president.
Yeah, it determines who the president is going to be. And so, because the amount of people that they have in the House and in the Senate affects the amount of votes someone gets in the Electoral College, it definitely affects who is going to be really choosing the president of the United States of America. So these very small states who don't really have a lot of people living there determine who is going to be the president of the US. So it goes against the whole one man, one vote principle, because even though the majority of people do not want a particular person to be president, because a fraction of people did, that person wins. So this is the reason why a minority president comes to be. Now, can anyone tell me what a minority president is?
Someone that wasn't voted
The
for
underground.
or voted for X.
Very good, yes. So these are the people who were not, they did not win the popular vote, but they did win the Electoral College vote, right? And the reason for that again is because of this. Okay. So, this is a population density map. This is by square mile. Does anyone know what a square mile is?
Mile, that's 6 square. Square mile, miss.
Just because you repeat it doesn't
It's
mean.
like a square foot, miss. It's like a square foot. It's a one mile by 1 mile square.
Everything you're saying makes sense.
What?
So, 1 mile is like a square. With a mile around
Right.
every part of the square. So here, there are more than 500 people living within this particular square mile. Okay, that's what that means. So it goes from 500 people living there to 0 people if it's white. So if you notice, obviously we're right here, right? Los Angeles, definitely this one right here, right? California is pretty much packed. However, look at Wyoming. Do you see that all of these are basically white? They're kind of like right here, they're not even a shade of pink. Some of them are, like this one right here. No one freaking lives in Wyoming, right? And yet, they have as much say over who becomes president as, well, they have more say, really, than California does. If you look at Idaho, same thing, right? Pretty much all of these states right here, they don't really have anyone living there. But they have as much of a push towards who becomes president as California does, or as, look at, I mean, Florida's pretty hot too. Obviously, New York and all these other states here do as well. But there's like no one living here, this big stretch of land right there. So, these are all districts. No one freaking lives in that district, but they still have some people there. They have a representative of, or maybe like, I don't know, 3,000 people, one person. As opposed to us here in LA, we have like 900,000 people for one person. It's a very big difference, okay? So the US population in total is approximately 342 million. Here in California alone, it's 39 million. So we have the biggest population of all the states, but we're not the ones choosing who will be president. It is these states right here, even though no one lives. Okay, that's kind of the problem with this type of representation. So, as we know, the census is used to draw up new district maps every 10 years. So that's how many years the census happens. When was the last census?
2020.
Yes, 2020. Very different time period. Good Lord. Now, district maps, which are these, well, they don't always look like this. Sometimes they look like this. But these are not drawn up by one specific person. It really does depend on the state. Sometimes it is the state legislator, so the people in power within the state. Usually a particular political party is the one in charge of it. Then there's the independent redistricting commissions. So these are the people who just look at the facts. They look at population density, they look at how the districts look, and that's how they determine how to draw them up. They're independent as well, so they're not partisan whatsoever. So what does that mean, if they're not partisan? They're not biased towards what?
First time.
Yeah, exactly. They're not biased towards any party, right? They're just going based off of logic and fact. Now, political commissions, do we think these are biased?
Yes.
Yes, they are, right? So this is when either the Republican or the Democratic Party commissions someone or a group to make districts that will benefit them. And then we have the court mandated maps. This is when someone sues either the state or the commission because they said, hey, I'm being discriminated against. So the courts have to step in and draw the map themselves because the map that whoever one of these drew was way too discriminatory. Like it was too much.